So there is just a couple things I want to run through. First off, I decided to start looking at the whole picture, the entire environment of AMC from the beginning of the year until now, because I haven't really been paying attention to anything other than from the area that I started investing in this at back in March, and this was the day that my options made significant gains, and I did not know how that happened, so I decided to find out what was going on with AMC. Led me to Trey and the whole community of apes and whatnot. So, I never paid attention to anything like this back here at all. I knew it had a run up somewhere, but I never really looked at it. And to say that this is the squeeze, and that we already had the big squeeze, to say that would be the same thing here. It'd be the same exact thing as saying, well, this was the squeeze. This was the big one. And then it went from here, back down to 3/4 of its price. And then stayed that way. Kind of running up. Like there's an almost but not quite 2-month time frame where it seems to have a nice little run up. Like a nice run up. So I decided to go back and just look at it as a whole, mainly sparked by the BD6, which is a mutual fund from BlackRock. Back at the end of July, everyone was talking about it because there was a filing that came out that said they added roughly 500 million to it, and everyone was like, well, why would they be doing that unless they were expecting a gigantic price movement, blah, 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 blah. Once again, people failing to realize all of these filings are for a time frame back before June 30th. They're all filings for the second quarter. BD6 no longer houses that AMC. And I went through and looked at it more in depth, and it was on the 28th is when this was put in of May. And it wasn't filed until 2 months later. And then if you go back and look, because if you do the math on this, that's roughly $26 some per share. Back on the 27th, the day before, is when they would have bought this. And it was at a low of 18, a high of 29. They got in 26 something, threw it in there. And they were only running on about 10 million shares around this time. And we know somewhere between here and 30th, they bought like 20 million more shares to give them a total of 30 million. That could have been this. All of this shit here, all of this bullshit could have been institutions that were already in because of this. Seeing it was running up again, it had already hit highs above where it had previously gone. People were saying back here too, I went back and looked at this was the squeeze. There was no squeeze potential in AMC. This was it, and you're stupid if you're still in it. There's all kinds of shit saying that back here. And this very well could have been all of these institutions, doubling or tripling up their holdings because it was moving up here. And you had 1.2 billion volume this day on the $20 run up. We haven't even seen a day like that since. This is the closest we've had, a little more than half of that. So this could very well not be shorts that have covered. There could still be a lot of shorts out here, a whole lot. That's how Melvin got in trouble. Melvin got in trouble because they held their shorts way too long. Is that the purpose of this? No, that is not the purpose of a short play, is to hold it for a long time. That's, a fundamental short play. You're not in it very long, but this was not a fundamental short play, and that needs to be understood. This was an attempt to bankrupt a company, and you can short the ever-loving shit out of it. Naked short, whatever short you want to do, and once they file bankruptcy, you don't have to return those shares anymore. There's no company anymore. It's dissolved. You get away with it. So, I fully believe there's a bunch of shares that still haven't been returned that were shorted back here. I am 100% of the mindset that that's the case. And then it went all the way up to here and got halted, and that gave them an opportunity to load up a bunch of new shorts and push this down to keep them from being trapped. And if they're averaged up here is kind of where they started losing of the vast majority of their money, and then they started shorting the fuck out of it down to that point, they're kind of net neutral with profitable loan and a not profitable loan. So It is very possible that there is still a shitload of shorts from this time that have not been returned. This is not a big squeeze. This is a run-up. That is what this is. This is a run-up. The squeeze would have fucking, boom. I mean, it would be a gigantic, frantic move upward and then slam back down to somewhere around the base of before it happened. And we haven't hit that at all. And I decided to go back the year to date and look at the whole thing to see if there's patterns anywhere, and there are. There's patterns. There is. And if you actually look at the environment and look at the volume and everything, it's very, very identical to what has happened here since this time frame. Everything. I'm talking MACD, everything. There's patterns. There is patterns. Now, granted, the entire environment changed here, and it is most definitely not a coincidence that we had all of this interest and people that bought in, and then on the 30th, which is the last day that 13Fs are calculated and then reported through that time being, that we started seeing significant drop-off. Meaning, I'm sure institutions were like, okay, well, it's been 30 days. That was just a run up. We're not going to sit here holding on to this and, nothing's happening or whatever. And then they get out. Institutions aren't in this for the squeeze. They're fundamental traders. They make money where they can make money. They don't have to hold on to something and pray to God it blows up to the moon. It's not how they trade. So I don't think that is coincidence. I also don't think it's coincidence these guys said June, and then on the 1st it started declining. Because other people that got into this, either in this area or this area here, were like, yeah, well, fuck that. Nothing's happening. I'm going to go elsewhere. But this is not, none of this says squeeze. None. Absolutely none of this says a squeeze has taken place. This is a run-up. That's it. That is it. This was a run-up, too. It was a run-up. Came down and based higher than the $1-2 average it was at for a while. And then like around every 2 months, it had a nice little jump. And if you look at it on a small scale, if you can imagine this scale being like this, just kind of looking at it from that angle, I mean, this thing went from $5 up to 15. That's a significant fucking change. It's a big gain. It just doesn't look like it because it's such a small scale here. And then, about 2 months later, from that little March hiccup, you had the Wanda shit go down and ran back up there, but it had based higher than the $5 it was at before, and then ran up. Wanda sold their shit and it went back down, but then immediately started curtailing and running up again, getting more exposure. Maybe some shorts, maybe some were like, yeah, this thing is gradually going up. People are buying back in. It does not look like it's heading for bankruptcy. We're going to get out. They got out. And then, maybe these institutions here, like I said, started taking more notice of this and bought more. And then got out. We're not really going to know a lot until the third quarter filings come out and the monthly 13Fs. That shit doesn't take effect until next year, I believe. So there's just a lot we don't know. But I don't believe this has squeezed yet. Either way, I know that there's more shorts that were taken out here. I know that there was that have not been returned. I think that these shorts were taken intentionally to drive this down, and then it started going back up. Then they had to find new ways to fucking short it using ETFs or whatever the case may be. There's also the fact that we've never had like 100% institutional owner or 100% ownership of the float. That's never been verified. It was like 80% back in March and then 80% again in June. There was a time when Melvin and Wanda and all them or whoever were still holding their shares, and there was like 30% institutional ownership or something at one point, somewhere in between here. So, looking at this from the broad picture, if you go look at any squeeze in history, you go look at any chart, this is not a squeeze. This is a run-up. That's exactly what it is. It's a run-up. And I'm fairly certain that when the third quarter 13Fs start getting released, and if we go back and actually look at shit, we'll see, how many shares they have. I mean, you already know, like I said, this was at 10 million at one point. They were under 10 million prior to the second quarter. They were like a little under 10 million. There's a good chance they sold off that other 20 million, that they're not holding 30 million right now. There's a very good chance. We're looking at all this crazy shit that aligns with the June 30th date, and then a significant decline, which was much needed for these guys. I mean, all their shorts definitely weren't returned. All the shorts that have happened definitely are not returned. There's just, there's no way. There's no possible way that has happened, and this is just dead. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of crazy shit that doesn't make sense. This whole environment is completely different from here. The environment as a whole. New filings, new regulations, a lot more new investors and people that piled into this, which is what's allowed it to hold a base, in the 30s. All those new people. But this very well, could be getting to a point. It's just getting a lot more traction, a lot more people saying, man, this is just weird. This doesn't make sense, and blah, blah, blah. Same things they were saying back here. They were like, well, this is weird. This doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be a dying company, but it's, it's basing and it's rising. And according to, if you look at patterns, and I have been watching this environment since March, especially scrutinizing it between the mid-June to now. There was times in here when the option environment was dead. It was dead. Like, the vast majority of it is not a great time to buy options. And there's only been a few areas in here where you could have made a little bit of money. Like this from here to like here was the prime time for cashing in contracts. And then from then, it just started dying. People losing interest, whatever the case may be. But following the pattern, following the time chart, this looks like it's poised for a turnaround. The environment is changing. More often than not, you can find profitable days or portions of the day in AMC now. But the volume it's like just no different from back here. A lot of the volume's the same. And nobody back here was screaming about, delayed orders and being pushed into a dark pool and all that shit. But I do not think that they have covered. Not like that, not in that sense. I think this was a ploy to keep this around net neutral at best. But they were hoping for a drastic sell-off. And it just didn't happen. It didn't. And it's got a new solid base, seemingly. And it looks like the environment as a whole is turning around. It's starting to look like, mid-May. It's really what it's starting to look like. It really is. It's just starting to look like mid-May. And we'll see, man. Like, there's no proof. That my whole thing is that all these claims of manipulation and all this bullshit, and they're like, no one has proof. Like, no one. Yeah, I know these guys front run. I know they do nefarious activities in the dark pool. I'm well aware of that. But no one anywhere, no whistleblower, no nothing. No one's come out and given us any solid information, but also no one's really come out to dispute it, like from the financial sector, which I would have expected, like someone to come out and be like, come on, man, like, no, that, anything, whatever. Nothing to that degree. So there's a lot of legal tactics in the stock market that can be used to suppress price action, to create a dead environment. But there's a very good chance this overall is just us. Like, you don't know all of these people that are claiming to be buying and holding. And like I said, there's guys now that have been making videos guys that have been in this community for a little while that were all buy and hold, that were like now are teaching and telling people to set buy and sell limits, which traps your fucking price. It traps it. It traps it. It makes it bounce between these little odd levels. Excuse me. So all I know is this is not what a squeeze looks like. Not at all. This is not what a squeeze looks like. It doesn't do this. It just doesn't. And I know that this was not, 130 million shorts returned. I know that that's not the case. But again, we just, we got to keep remembering we only know and have only been told we own 80%. So if we don't own 100%, then all the claims of ridiculous naked shorting, there's no validity to that. There's none. But yes, there's no limit on how long you can hold your short position. There isn't. The only reason financial institutions and shit would have implemented these ridiculous stipulations on borrowing AMC and GME is because these guys are still holding major short positions already. And then the risk management team says, no, you're not just you already have a shitload of short positions. You owe us a bunch of shares already. We're not going to let you just keep fucking shoving this shit down to where you can try to make it pretty for you again. Like, no, that's too high risk. So if you want to borrow them, you're going to have to fucking give us a lot more money, a whole lot more money. And that's when the ETF started making their crazy little fucking moves. So, yeah, is there manipulation? Sure, 100%. There always is. And it's all over the place. Like I said, it's not just in AMC. You can see it all over the place. Just so many underlyings that move exactly the same, that shouldn't be moving exactly the same. But especially any of them that have to do with AMC or GME. But I would not claim that this was the big squeeze. Because again, there was people back here that claimed this was the big squeeze. Seriously, they did. They claimed this was the big squeeze. And then that this was done. And then anyone holding here was stupid. I wasn't here for this part, but I went back and researched it and looked at shit back then, Reddit posts, whatever I could find, videos. People were being told the same shit that they're being told now. But again, point of my channel is just to bring truth and information to this community, because you're not getting it. You're getting bullshit fed to you from a silver fucking spoon from a bunch of guys that are just happy to take your money. Like, if I didn't believe that this was gonna squeeze, excuse me, I'm eating, based on my DD and what I've looked at, I wouldn't be invested in this thing anymore. Nor would I be taking time out of my fucking day to make videos about it. For what? Like, literally, for what? The only profitable video to make is one telling everyone what they want to hear. That's the only reason to be making videos, honestly. That's the only reason. Unless you really want to bring information to people and help them, save them money. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I do not call this the big squeeze. It just doesn't have the makings of it. Doesn't seem to be the case. And no, I do not think that we're going to just wake up and all the shorts have just magically covered. It wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be. There's just no way. So, I am still of the belief that this thing should at some point be seeing this range again, hopefully soon, if this pattern that I've seen holds true. This volume starts picking back up again. All these regulations and hurdles that these guys have to jump now to do fuckery are being put in place. I'm not going to call any dates. There's still people putting wrong information out there about September. They're putting September as the time frame that everything's going to go off now. Not saying that they're wrong, but their information is unfounded and it's incorrect. But the best I can offer you is that no one talks about this back here, and it actually should be talked about a lot. It should be. This should be talked about a lot. Because everything we're hearing about this, all this was being said here. It was being said here. And even this was not indicative of a short squeeze. This is indicative of people continually buying and a bunch of shorts trying to push the price down. That's what this looks like. Like a short squeeze is a bunch of returns, and then everyone's out. Everyone got their money, they're out. That's not what this looked like. And that's what this looks like. A bunch of people got in, and a bunch of shorts were trying to fucking push this down. Trying to keep it down. Keep it from forcing them to have to cover all of those shares. Ugh. So, you take it for what you want to take it as. I just bring you updated shit as I look at it, as I think about it. Again, this week is the next 10 days, but this week especially is kind of going to indicate if we are in a turnaround. If we're heading towards one of these areas again, right here, where the buying was starting to increase again before a nice move. So, we shall see. The last big move we had was roughly 2 months after the second. That was when we were down 30 something and then back up to 44, whatever it was, 45, which I'm sure was, excuse me, some shorts covering. Very sure of it. And then I'm sure more were taken out. So we don't know for sure. Nobody does. All we can do is look at the information we have, go back, study past information, look deeper into allegations of corruption or fraud or allegations of bullishness based on, like the BD6 that no longer has AMC in it. But people have been talking about it since the end of July because they thought that that's when BD6 added AMC to it. Not true. So give you both looks at both sides of the coin. I'll be up at 4 a.m. looking at the market, see how AMC looks. And then I will also, instead of looking at all of this shit, I will be going back here and looking how AMC was looking in the early morning hours. Because that's where I'm going to start gauging this at. Again, this is not a squeeze. It's not. This is not a big squeeze. This is not a squeeze. Based on the math and everything done back here, if all of the shorts had covered, coupled with FOMO buying and everything, we very easily would have been at $250, $300 if that was the legitimate squeeze that happened. Can it get there now? No one knows, because no one knows how many of these down here were returned. But what we do know is there was 130 legal at this point that were outstanding. Now it's trending back up to that way. I think 100 to 110 was the highest it had been. And you know what? That might have been right before this. I actually got to go back and look at that. Right before the 31 to 45 run up. That may have been when the short interest was back up around 1920. And the shares had finally gone back into like 110 or something like that. Million shares held short, I think. I'll have to go back and look at it. But still. We'll see what's going on tomorrow. And as long as nothing crucial comes out or I find any more pertinent information, then I will talk to y'all then. I hope y'all have a good evening.